They told me I was too old to travel, as if the weight of years had erased the strength of my past. Their words stung, though I tried to hide it behind a quiet smile. They saw only gray hair and slow steps, not the woman who once carried the world on her shoulders. They forgot that I had crossed seas with a baby in my arms, holding hope in one hand and fear in the other, determined to keep going no matter what. I remember the long nights on the ship, rocking my child to sleep while the ocean roared outside. I remember the hunger, the uncertainty, and the silent prayers whispered into the dark. I remember clutching that tiny body close to my chest, promising that no matter what storms came our way, I would not let go. Every wave threatened to swallow us whole, but I stood firm, because mothers do not have the luxury of weakness. I had no one to tell me I was too old, too tired, or too fragile. I only had my will, and that was enough. So now, when they dismiss me with a careless wave of the hand, when they tell me to just watch the house, they reveal how little they know of me. They think old age has dulled my courage, but inside me still lives the woman who once defied the sea. These wrinkles are not signs of weakness. They are proof of survival. My steps may be slower, my breath shorter, but my spirit is unbroken. If I could cross oceans with a baby in my arms, then surely I can cross whatever road lies before me now. That night, I sat alone in the silence of the house, the ticking clock the only sound keeping me company. I held back my tears, though they burned hot behind my eyes. It wasn't the first time I had been left behind, but somehow this time it cut deeper. Once, not so long ago, I had been their whole world. My arms were their safest place, my words their comfort, and my presence their shield. They ran to me when they were scared, clung to my dress when the world felt too big, and cried for me in the middle of the night. Now I was just the old woman who kept the house warm while they made memories without me. I remembered the days when their laughter filled these very rooms, when tiny hands tugged at me, begging for stories, songs, or just one more hug. I remembered cooking meals with love, sitting up late with sick children, wiping tears and bandaging scraped knees. Back then, I was indispensable, the heartbeat of the home. Every smile they wore had a little bit of me in it. And yet, time is cruel. It shifts roles without asking, and suddenly the one who was once needed becomes invisible. As I sat there, I realized the house hadn't changed. The walls still held the echoes of their childhood, and the pictures still showed their faces beaming up at me. But the people had changed. They had grown, moved forward, and somewhere along the way, left me standing still. I swallowed my tears because I didn't want to drown in them. I reminded myself that though they might forget, I remember. I remember being their whole world, and that memory is something no careless word, no thoughtless act can ever take from me. The next morning, just as the sun was stretching its light across the curtains, I heard a noise that didn't belong. At first, I thought it was the wind rattling the shutters, but then came the creak of footsteps and the faint murmur of voices outside my door. My heart skipped, but it didn't stop. Strangers were circling the house, testing the locks, whispering like snakes in the grass. They thought the place was empty, or worse, they thought that if anyone was inside, they would be too old, too frail, or too helpless to fight back. They thought wrong. I stood still for a moment, steadying myself. My knees may ache in the mornings, but I still know how to move quietly. I reached for the phone, dialing with hands that did not tremble, not this time. As the operator answered, I whispered the details, my eyes locked on the shadow shifting at the back door. I could hear them fumbling, trying to force their way in. To them, I was just an old woman, an easy target, someone who would freeze in fear. But fear was something I had learned to master long ago. Memories of harder days flashed before me. Nights when I guarded sick children, days when I walked miles just to put food on the table, and times when survival itself depended on my courage. Compared to those battles, these intruders were nothing more than pests. Within minutes, the sirens grew louder, slicing through the morning air. The strangers bolted, scrambling like cowards who'd been caught in their own trap. I exhaled only after they were gone, leaning against the wall. My body felt old, yes, but my spirit stood tall. They thought I was weak and helpless, but they learned what my family had forgotten. This old woman is still a warrior. I stood my ground that morning, even as the shadows outside pressed harder against the walls of my home. My breath was steady, though my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I called for help, my voice calm, not shaking the way they might have expected from an old woman. With each word I spoke, I felt the strength of years rise within me, the kind of strength that only comes from living a long life of battles, losses, and victories. Age had slowed my steps, yes, but it had not touched the fire inside me. When the operator assured me help was on the way, I stayed near the window, watching those intruders scurry and whisper. I thought of the stories my family will never know, the nights when I walked alone through dark streets with nothing but faith to keep me safe, the times I fought through sickness with no one to lean on, and the days when the world demanded I be stronger than my body wanted to be. Courage is not about youth or speed. Courage is about refusing to bow down when danger knocks at your door. I gripped the edge of the table, not from fear but from resolve. Not today. I whispered to myself, as if the walls and the pictures on them could hear me. This house will not fall. I will not fall. And in that moment, I knew I had already won. By the time the police arrived, the cowards had vanished, but I remained standing, unbroken. That morning became my proof, not to the strangers who fled, but to myself and to my family. Age may wrinkle the skin, but it does not erase courage. If anything, it deepens it. When my family returned, their laughter filled the doorway before they even stepped inside. Suitcases rolled across the floor. Children chattered excitedly about beaches and airplanes, and my daughter's voice was light and carefree, as if the world had stood still while they were gone. I greeted them with a soft smile, but I carried a secret inside me, heavy and shining like gold. They thought they had left behind a fragile old woman who could do nothing more than water plants and lock the doors at night. What they came home to was something different. I didn't argue. I didn't scold. I let the silence do the teaching. Over tea, I told them how strangers had tried to break into the house and how they mistook me for weak and helpless. Their faces paled, laughter fading into shock. My son-in-law put down his cup, staring at me as though he had never truly seen me before. The children leaned in, wide-eyed, as if their grandmother had suddenly turned into the heroine of a story. I explained calmly how I called the police, how I stood firm, and how I refused to let fear swallow me whole. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. In that moment, they realized the old grandma they had dismissed was the same woman who had crossed oceans, survived storms, and now defended the very home they loved. I watched their eyes soften, guilt creeping into their expressions, but I did not bask in it. I only wanted them to understand, age may change the body, but it does not erase the spirit. They left me behind, but it was I who protected everything they came back to, and that was lesson enough.